5 F's, okay, when it comes to fix and flip. And that's funding, finding, fixing, flipping, and finishing. Now we're going to transition to finding the deal. All right, and some different ways to find deals. I'm going to go even into my evaluation of deals. So this is very important. This is the second step of those 5 F's. The first one is on the list, I've got things like Bandit Signs. I've got mailers, door hangers, which I've done, believe it or not, in a very specific area that I wanted to buy properties in. We call that your farm area, where you're focused on. You may have a particular area where you want to do flips, particular area that you want to do rental properties. Now, as far as Bandit Signs, I know you've seen those out there. They're like the yellow signs. A lot of people put those out there. We buy houses. We buy ugly houses. You just got to be careful, because there's some municipalities where they don't allow you to do that. They're going to take it down, and they may call you and threaten to give you a fine if you do it again. So you just got to be careful of that. And I don't really put out Bandit Signs like that, but I have other people that I know that do that. And sometimes they'll tell me about the property that they've been able to get from a Bandit Sign, asking about, you know, buying their houses. Mailers, I have done mailers, targeted mailers. Our company, we've got the education company has this software program that I can target, and you know, you may have it as well. If you want to do a mailer, maybe I can facilitate that for you, but we can do postcards or letters. And what's great about the company that we use is it looks like it's handwritten. It's a robot holding a ink pen and actually hand writes it. So it looks like it's a personal letter from you. So we can search the database. So what I've done before, a geographical target area, I've done that first. And then maybe I'll look at people that are behind, that got a notice of default, so they're behind on their mortgage. I could also target out-of-state landlord. I can have high equity, low equity, depending on what I'm targeting, and then I can do a mailing. And the mailings we do, they're about, I think we get them done for, I want to say, I'm trying to think how many I've done. I think I did 600, and I paid about, I think the last targeted one I did was 600, and I might have paid maybe 200, 250. They're about, I want to say maybe 50 cents each is when you use postcards. So anyway, there's mailings, so you could target those. Door hangers was when there was a certain subdivision that I wanted to buy properties in. I actually created my own little door hangers and made them pink, so it looked like a disconnection notice, so that people would definitely take a look at them. It's very cheap. Just printed them out, put a little rubber band, just punched a hole in them, put a rubber band through it, and just threaded the rubber band through the hole. And then it was really great. I just hooked them onto the doorknobs, just took that rubber band, boom, onto the doorknobs. And I did get calls from that. So those are ways to find properties. The other ways that I've bought properties are through sheriff sales. Now, let me think about that. So sheriff sales, I've attended many sheriff sales, and I've got to think of whether or not I've actually bought. I bought online, but those were actually REOs, real estate owned by the bank, but they were not sheriff sales. So I've gone to sheriff sales, but when I think about it, I don't know if I bought any at a sheriff sale. Made a lot of offers. So here's the deal with the sheriff sale. So what the sheriff sale is that's a foreclosure sale. So the sheriff sale is now when the lender has taken the owner all the way through the foreclosure process. And now the property is going to be sold at a sheriff sale. And normally what happens is you have the lender the amount that's owed, the amount on the loan plus all the penalties, you know, interest, everything that the bank is going after, that's going to be the opening bid on the property. So if the property is only worth $200,000 and the bank is owed $300,000 at the auction, the bank's going to start the bidding at $300,000, and they're going to say opening bid on case XYZ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opening bid, $300,000. Are there any other bids? Dead silence. Unless a rookie investor in there didn't do their research and says, oh, 301. All right. So anybody that knows what they're doing in that case, there's no bids, boom, sold to the lender. All right. So it didn't go to a third party. And when you go to a sheriff's sale, I mean, it depends where they're at and which, like in Cook County that I've gone to, I would say 60, 70% of the properties are going to go back to the bank. There's going to be little or no equity there that any investor, any savage, smart investor is going to want to buy and pay that price. But at a sheriff's sale, it can happen where let's flip that. Let's say the property's worth $300,000 and the bank's only owed $200,000. All right, we got an opening bid of $200,000. Any other bids? Boom, 100, or 210, 220, 200. And sometimes they'll say we're going to start out with $5,000 increments. So it's got to go up 5,000 all the time, or maybe it's 10,000 increments. Then they'll go down to maybe $1,000 increments. And then could just even go $1 increments. And someone will say, I bid 250,000, and someone will say plus one. That just means that they're going $1 over. 260 plus one. 270 plus one. And then maybe it goes to 271, 272, 272,000. Back and forth. And then the winning bid then, now they don't get the deed right away. That usually will take a while in Illinois. And in Cook County, that could take a couple months before they actually get a deed, but they will get the paperwork for that property, and they would have to wait to get the possession. But here's the risk, all right? And there's why I've never bought a property there, is because I'm probably way too conservative. And if you don't buy many, the people that buy properties, they buy a lot there. You have some of the same buyers. They might buy 50 properties a month there. And the reason they do that and almost have to do it is they need to spread the risk. Because if you buy one property that you have not been into, and that property is a total gut rehab, and you thought it was worth $300,000, but it's in present condition, it's worth $200,000, you just lost $100,000. There's not many people that are willing to take that chance. I know I'm not. So most of the time, these sheriff sales are properties that there's still someone living in there. Now they might have moved out, it might be vacant, but they'll say right on it when it's going to be up for auction, do not disturb the tenant or owner or occupant, it'll say. Do not disturb the occupant. It is illegal to go on the property, blah, blah, blah. They'll have some stuff that'll scare you. So if you know it's a sheriff's sale, most people drive by, I'll take a chance. Some investors may go onto the property. I'm just letting you know, usually that's illegal. It's usually stated right in the announcement of the sheriff's sale. But you're taking a chance on a property that you haven't seen. And some people made great money in those because they'll assume the worst. And that's what I did. When I was making my bids, I'm like, I haven't been in the place. I got to assume the worst. I got to assume that it's trashed. And I'll work the numbers based on it being trashed and make a bid accordingly. And if I get it, great. And then if it's not trashed, I make even more. But normally when I'm doing my bids based on trashed, it's going for higher than that. So people, a lot of times they use auction as a very broad term. Okay, I can have an auction today. I could auction off my furniture. I could auction off my house. All what an auction means is that it's a bidding situation, right? So you have auctions that are REO. In fact, number 3 says REO auction. That's different. That's the bank already owns it. Now the bank might use an online site like auction.com or Hubzu, one of the other sites. They then can auction their property and have a reserve. So a lot of times when you see auctions online, Hubzu and auction.com are probably the 2 biggest companies. And I bought many properties, online auctions and in-person auctions, but they've been REO auctions, not sheriff sale auctions. Again, sheriff sale means that the owner still owns the property and you're catching it at the point where it's now either going to go to the bank or to the third party because they're in default. An REO auction that you'd see on Hubzu or auction.com, and auction.com started advertising, I don't know if they're still doing, they started advertising some sheriff sales on there actually. Used to be all just REO auctions, but you'll have to look at it. If it's bank owned, already bank owned, the bank normally has a reserve. So how that normally works is, you know, my advice is to save yourself some time. a lot of people, rookie investors, will contact me. Randy, this is unbelievable. You know, there's this house that's going for auction, and the starting bid's only $25,000, and the thing's worth like $100,000. I mean, we're gonna make a killing. It's only $25,000. All right, so here's a couple things. My advice: number one, know that there's probably a reserve on that property, which means the bank isn't telling you, but they may not take anything less than $95,000. So you're getting all excited because you're thinking, oh, $25,000, what if nobody shows the auction? All right, unless it says absolute auction, which means the higher price wins, normally it's not going to be an absolute auction, and there's going to be a bank reserve. So you're bidding. Now, if you're the winning bidder and you bid less than the reserve, so let's say that reserve is $95,000 and you bid $90,000, you still might get it. They will go to the bank or whoever owns the property and say, listen, I know your reserve's 95. The highest bid we got was 90. Do you want to accept that offer, or do you want to just send it through our bidding process again next month or next week or whatever? Because I have bought properties at auctions that were under the reserve. I always feel good if I get an auction under the reserve or get a property under the reserve. I'm like, wow, I got it for less than what the bank really planned on getting for it. But I was probably close enough. They're like, let's just take it, right? Sometimes they've contacted me and said, well, is that your highest and best offer? Because you're close, but they're not accepting your offer. So you may have a second shot at it in that way. But here's how I'd save a little bit of time. A lot of these properties that are the bank-owned properties were on the MLS at one time. They were on Realtor.com at one time. Research it. All right, look up that address. And there's a very good chance that that property that's starting at $25,000, if you look at what it was listed for, and it was listed for $100,000 last week, and now it's on the auction and the starting bid is $25,000.
Oh my God.
Very likelihood that the reserve is going to be close to 100,000. All right, they're not going to jump from 100,000 to 25,000 in a week. All right, so just set proper expectations. I'm not saying not to bid on that property, but know that the price point that you're going to get it at is probably not going to be 25,000. It's a real easy way to get an idea of what the reserve might be. They might have dropped it down to 90, and maybe you can get it for 80. So I'm not saying don't go after it, because I have gotten properties that way. I'm just saying know that the starting bid and the reserve are two totally different things, and the reserve is probably going to be much closer to the last list price rather than the starting bid price. So let's talk about short sales. All right. So, I mean, I don't want to insult your intelligence. Everyone probably knows on the line here, if you had any training at all, you know that a short sale is when you're trying to get the lender to take less for the property than what's owed. So using my examples that I said about the sheriff's sale. So before it goes to that sheriff's sale, let's say the property is worth $200,000 and that's owed $300,000 is owned on it. Now, if you get a short sale, if you're executing, if you're trying to complete a short sale, what you're doing is you're getting the homeowner to agree to maybe take, if it's only worth $200,000, you might be getting the homeowner to agree $150,000 for the house. And now you also have to get the bank agree to take only $150,000 on that $300,000 loan. Would they do it? Probably not that big of a spread. But would they shave off 50,000, 100,000? It's done all the time, because a bank, I've heard estimates that it's at least minimally, it would take the bank at probably minimally $50,000 in expenses to go through the whole foreclosure process, as far as all the notices that needs to be done, the legal fees, the court fees, all that kind of stuff. They could be looking at as much as $50,000 to do that. Plus they're not maybe getting any mortgage payments during that whole time. And that could take months, and sometimes in Illinois, sometimes a year or years. So they are open, you know, don't say, oh, that'll never happen. I've done short sales before. And that's really the best way. Well, I shouldn't say the best way. There's two ways to do short sales, and I've approached them both ways. One is you're in contact with the homeowner first no realtor, no brokers are involved. It's not listed. You're negotiating with the homeowner. You get them to agree to a short sale. Keep in mind, on a short sale, they can't make any money. They cannot profit any money. Now, I think if the bank lender agrees, sometimes maybe they can walk away with a couple $1,000s if the bank agrees to it maximum. But basically, they cannot profit from that short sale. So many times they'll agree to anything. I don't care, 100,000, 150,000, whatever you want to buy it for. We explain to them it doesn't really matter to them because they're just walking away from the debt. The bank will forgive them the debt if we do the short sale. So there are things though that and again, we don't want to get too deep in it. Short sales, another 8-hour course just on that. But just know that the bank could come up after them for the deficit if you don't agree to that and have terms of that in advance. That let's say the bank wrote off 100,000, or you're asking them to write out 100,000, they could come after the homeowner if it's not agreed upon in advance, or they could also 1099 them on the difference, and they'd have to pay taxes on that. So those are some issues that you have to address in a short sale. And what I have in parentheses there are deed restrictions. So I've only ran into deed restrictions a couple times in my transactions, but every time it's been in regard to a short sale. So if the bank, let's say the bank agreed to sell me the property for 200,000, oftentimes on the deed, there will be a restriction. And the restriction, one of the ones that I had is something like this. I'm not allowed to sell the property at all for 30 days. From 30 days to 90 days, I can only increase the price 20% for what I paid for it. And after 90 days, there's no restrictions at all. I can sell it for whatever I want. So the bank sometimes will do that as a way to feel like, hey, I'm not getting taken. They bought it for 100,000. They're not going to be able to resell it for 300,000 tomorrow, or even sell it at all the next month. Or they're only going to be able to sell it for 20% more for the next 90 days. They'd have to hang on to it for over 90 days to make any significant profit at all. So I understand the logic. Not all banks do that when it comes to short sales, but you do have to look at that. And if you're pursuing a short sale, you should have that conversation with the bank. Will there be any deed restrictions on the property? Okay. All right. Wholesalers. I've bought from wholesalers before. We talked a little bit about how that has changed in the state of Illinois with wholesaling. I said I would get into it at the end, but maybe this is a good time to talk about it a little bit. So one of the reasons I got my broker's license is because of the wholesaling, but it's not the whole story. Actually, there's a great opportunity with this brokerage that I joined. But what they have in place is they have what's called iBuyers, institutional buyers. So they have cash buyers already contracted. So by joining this brokerage, if I found a deal that normally I would wholesale, I could go to a potential seller, and let's say we have the conversation, hi, my name's Randy Pertler. I'm a real estate investor, but I also have to let you know I'm a licensed broker as well. I'd like to take a look at your house to see if it's something that I would like to purchase to either flip or rent. Do you mind if I take a look at your house and give you an offer? So I go through the house. Let's say I go through the house and it's okay, but it doesn't fit my criteria. At the end of the conversation, I may say something like this. First of all, if I was a wholesaler, I would say this. I would say, listen, I'm really interested in your house. I'm not sure if I want to buy it or if one of my partners or some of the other people I work with, some of the investors I know, they might want to buy it. But if I didn't have a real estate license, I'd have to get it under contract in order to offer it to anybody else. So that's how a wholesaler would get that property under contract. But now with my broker's license and with the iBuyers, at the end of that, looking at the property and seeing it's not for me, I could say this. I said, listen, this property is not going to be for me. However, my company has relationships with institutional buyers. In order to be an institutional buyer, they have to buy at least 100 properties a year. at least 100 property a year. So they are cash buyers and they buy a lot of properties. Are you interested in me getting a cash offer from one of our institutional buyers? Most people, out of curiosity, if nothing else, are going to say, well, yeah, sure, of course. Well, why not? Okay, the only thing for me to be able to do this for you legally is I have to get a short-term listing from you that will give me permission to get a cash offer from the iBuyers. If you refuse that offer, the listing's over. You can sell it on your own. I can maybe find somebody else that might be interested in buying your property, but I do need to get it under contract, a listing contract, in order to send it to my iBuyers. And they usually give you a dollar amount within about 5 days, what they'd be willing. So that's one way. Another reason why I joined this company is to be able to be a wholesaler. And again, I've got no money in it, no risk in it. It's just the conversation, just like a wholesaler would. And you've got built-in buyers. What's cool about this, with this model, is that if I do sell a property to one of the iBuyers and they're going to flip that property, I get commission when they buy the property, and I also get commission when they sell the property as a fix-up. And that could be a huge commission, because I might sell it to them for, let's say they bought it for $200,000. Well, maybe I'll make 1% on that. So maybe, because iBuyers they pay less commission than a standard commission. So let's say I only make $1,000 or $2,000 on that sale, 1% commission on $200,000. I only make $2,000. However, they're going to fix the property up and maybe do a renovation, and they may sell it for $500,000 when they get all done with that property. Now, 1% of $500,000, now I make another $5,000, and I don't have to be involved in it at all. They're just automatically going to get that commission on both the buy side and the sell side. So that's pretty cool. But I do buy, as an investor, as a rehabber, as a fix and flipper, I do buy from wholesalers. Now, I get this question asked all the time by rookies and wanting to get started in real estate. They're like, can I get you on my buyer's list? Can you give me your criteria? I will provide that, but here's the deal. I tell them, I say, listen, if I'm going to buy something from a wholesaler, you've got to give me value. And one of the values that you need to bring to me is time. If you bring me a property, I want you to evaluate that property the way I do and let me know that it meets my criteria before you send it to me. Can you do that? Most of them say yes, but they really don't. They usually just, when they get a property, they just send it to me. I'll look at their ARV, the wholesalers, buy this property for $100,000. The rehab cost is $20,000 and it'll sell for $200,000. Those are the numbers that a wholesaler's showing me, giving me. And then I do my evaluation, and a lot of times they'll send me pictures, so I'll have pictures to look at. And now, just by looking at the pictures, I'm like, there's $50,000 of work just in the pictures. I'm not even seeing the whole property. So you told me it was $20,000 rehab. It's at least 50. And then I checked my ARV, conservative ARV is only 175, and you said it was 200,000. Okay, I'll look at that property, or I'll look at the email from that wholesaler one more time on a new property. And if I find the same thing, that he's not credible, I won't waste my time looking at the properties that they're sending me. So I always tell this to people: if you want to be a good wholesaler and make a living on it, you better understand and know flipping and rental property and how to evaluate rental property, because now you're adding value to someone like me that will look at those emails and like, wow, this is spot on. I mean, I can see the realistic ARV as being 250, because I'm doing my comps, I'm getting 250. So also on the rehab cost, I'm looking at pictures. This looks like it's going to cost about this amount. So anyway, that's wholesalers. I'm on wholesalers lists. If you guys want to send me properties as a wholesaler, I'll take a look at them, but you need to be accurate as possible. Okay. All right. And the probate. So probate, if someone has passed away and their property goes through probate, you can, and I don't do probate. I know a lot of investors that live and die on probate. That's their whole business. And what they're doing is basically, so a property is owned by an elderly, let's say it's an elderly person, they pass away, they contact the people from the probate list, they see who the heirs are, they contact them and they say, hey, I'm really sorry that you lost a loved one. I see that they have a property that they owned. If it would help you, I'd love to give you a cash offer and just take a look at it so you don't have to show it. I know you probably, have got a lot of other more important things on your mind. If you would, I'd be more than happy to come in and give you a cash offer or an offer to buy your house. So a lot of people do that. The probate is a real big part of what they do. And also when they do those probate houses, a lot of times they're buying furniture and other things that were left in like an estate sale. Okay, the MLS. Now here's the deal. I've had many investors say this. They say, oh, you can't find a deal on the MLS. There's too much competition. You can't find a deal that's listed, on realtor.com. There's just too much competition. Well, here's what I would say to that. I would say of the deals I've done in the last, let's say just 2 years, so I'll just think back that. I would say the deals I've done in the last 2 years, 80% of them were on the MLS. Now, how can that be if there's so much competition? Well, it's part of my business model in that I'm doing rehabs. If I was doing fix and flip, where I'm just changing out cabinets, doing cosmetic work, it would probably flip. Instead of 80%, it would be 20% or lower. Because if you're just going to do fixing items, you're just going to do a fix and flip, when that property's in that good a condition that you only have to change out cabinets and you have to update maybe the kitchen or update the bathrooms or change the carpet or paint, if that's all that needs to be done with that house, you are going to be competing not only with investors, but you're going to be competing with homeowners, people that want to buy and live in that property. They're going to pay a lot more for that property than what I would pay. That's in the school district they want. That's the price range they want. That's by their parents' house. That's whatever criteria they have set. And if they're going after that house, they're willing to pay a premium because they don't have to make a profit on that house like I do. So when you're going to just know that if you're going to be looking on the MLS and that's going to be a source for you to do real estate deals, just be realistic that there's a very good chance that it's going to be hard to find a fix and flip deal. It is going to be possible though to find rehab deals or gut rehab deals like I do. The other thing I hear all the time, and this is whether it's a wholesaler or just somebody in our real estate community brings it to me, my investing community brings it to me, and they'll say, Randy, I got this unbelievable deal. All what you got to do is do carpet and paint, and you're going to make like $50,000 on it. Here's my question. Why doesn't the homeowner just do carpet and paint and sell it for more than $50,000 and make the money themselves, right? There's a little logic test. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not impossible. It could be. Maybe the homeowner's elderly. Maybe they're handicapped. Maybe they're in the hospital. Maybe they got to get rid of the house and they don't want to do the carpet paint and so forth. So there is a possibility. But you've got to give yourself a reality check. There needs to be a reason why. Ask them why. Why would they sell it without doing the carpet and paint themselves? Why? And if that reason is, well, I don't know, or, well, no reason, they just don't, I guess they just don't want to do it. It's probably not a deal, right? It's a deal when you ask the question why and they give you an explanation. Well, they had to take a job out of state and they've already moved and now the wife is moving too and the kids are moving and they got 2 mortgages and they don't have money to put in. They just put money into this new house. They don't have money to put in the house they used to live in. Now you've got a reason. Now you're a problem solver. Now they have a problem, right? So anyway, just know that, especially if it's on the MLS. All right, evaluation. So going through my evaluation process, the first thing I do in the city of Chicago, without exception, the city of Chicago, you give me an address or I'm interested in an address, the first thing I do is I go to Trulia.com. If you're not familiar with that, that's Trulia.com, Trulia.com. and I put in the address and I look at the crime report. It is so easy to do and so quick. And here's the deal. Even though I'm learning neighborhoods and I know neighborhoods in Chicago, there's too many neighborhoods. Not only neighborhoods, there's areas where I will buy on one street and 2 streets over, I wouldn't buy. The one I'm flipping right now that we're selling next week that sold before it ever went on the market, if that house was located in the same neighborhood, but 2 blocks over, I would not have bought the house because of the crime. You say, how can it change that much? It does. It really, really does. And even if I'm wrong, even you're like, well, some of the crime could spill over. Absolutely. But here's another reason why I do that. And I use it as a criteria. When someone's going to buy that house and they say, Randy, let's say it's a broker that approaches me. Randy, I've got a client really interested in your house. However, they're not sure about the crime in that area. You know what? I wasn't sure about it either. So I went to Trulia.com, and you know what? I'm surprised. It's in the rated in one of the lowest crime areas in Cook County, right? You know how much more value, how much validity that has versus me saying, oh, yeah, you know, we've been doing the rehab. We haven't had any problems, which most people would say, oh, I think it's I drove the neighborhood. I thought it was pretty good. I talked to a neighbor. He seemed like a really nice guy. This is a third-party validation of the crime in that area. Even if it's not 100% accurate, that's not on me. That's on Trulia.com, but the data is very good. It's amazing how good it's been. And if you go to that site and you put in an address, it will go from a very light blue. It's almost white. It's a light blue to a dark blue, okay? So I only do flips. Now I might do a rental in the second phase over, but I only do my flips if the house is located in the lightest blue, the lowest crime. So it goes lowest crime to low to moderate to, I think, high, moderate, and then extremely high or something like that. So people bring me properties or they say it, and I train them over and over again. Don't even bring me a property address unless you've gone to Trulia.com. Because you know what I need in my criteria. I'm using you, or I would work with you if you're going to save me some time. At least save me that much time, okay? So that's the first thing I do. It also has school information and so forth, school district information. But crime is a must. And not only selling it, the other thing is your security. You're going to check on that work site. You don't want to be scared every time you check that work site. You don't want break-ins while your contractors are working. I've had a rental property one time in a bad area that one of my contractors was actually held up at gunpoint, right? You don't want to worry about those type of things. So to me, it's worth it. Now that's my real estate, we call it an investor ID. That's my investor identification. Believe me, people are making money on those higher crime areas. A lot of people do stuff in Woodlawn. I don't. Almost all of Woodlawn, almost every street, almost every block is in a crime area. It's not on the lowest crime area. It's low to high in that area. And I just don't do it. There's investors though, that are making a lot of good money in that area. It's just not something that I want to deal with, right? We got a class called Investor ID, and that's really understanding yourself and what you want to do and what your criteria is and what type of investing you're doing. It's really important to know your strengths, your weaknesses, then match up that with real estate investing strategies. Okay, comps. So the comparables, and you can do those on your own. If you're not a licensed broker, if you are a licensed broker, you can use the MLS. If you're doing it on your own, you know, there's a lot of sites that are going to try to give you the value, right? There's going to be Zillow with the estimated value. There's going to be Redfin. There's other sites. Here's what I do, and here's why. Before I had my broker's license, I only used Realtor.com. And here's why. And I've done my own. I picked it out. It's not going to provide you with a price. I don't look at the price they provide. If they provide you an estimated price, I don't look at that. I do my own comps. But the comps I pull them based on Realtor.com. And here's why. I'm going to say this later on also, is Think like an appraiser. Remember these words. Think like an appraiser. That will save you so much. When you're trying to evaluate the value of a property, take your emotion out of it, take your nice, cool wow factors that you've put into the house, and think like an appraiser. And I've done this, I've learned this from experience and from other instructors. So I'm looking at the comps, I'm looking at, let's say it's 4 bedrooms. This has 4 bedrooms, this has 4 bedrooms. This is 2.5 bath, this is 2.5 bath. This is, a brick, this is brick. So look at it, this is 3,000 square feet, this is 3,000 square feet. I'm looking at it with the numbers, right? Now, I will look at the condition now. Okay, did they do granite countertops? Did they do that? But if you can make the numbers work based on thinking like an appraiser, then you've got a great chance for it to sell at or above your ARV. I don't know that I've ever sold a property. All the properties that I've flipped, I don't know if I've ever sold one less than my original ARV. It's always more. Number one, I'm conservative, and I'm always pushing the envelope, right? It's not where I, where I struggle. I always get my ARV, but it's always can be supported when I think like an appraiser. And if the numbers work, thinking like an appraiser, let's say it appraises at 300,000. Yeah, I might put it on the market for 350. I might put it on the market for 330, whatever, push the envelope. But if I can make the numbers work, thinking like an appraiser, that's what I use in my evaluation. Does anybody know why I use Realtor.com rather than Redfin or Zillow or some of the other sites where I can obtain comparable properties to do my comp estimate? When an appraiser is called in to appraise that property and they come out there, they're going to run their comps. Appraisers have access to the MLS. Appraisers are going to use the MLS to come up with their comps. You could go to Zillow and you might base it on a comp, a great comp, and it's right next door or it's 2 doors down. It's a perfect comparable. And that comparable might be $50,000 more than the other ones. And you're basing it on that one being used as a comp. There's no guarantee that that appraiser is going to use it. In fact, in all likelihood, they may not use it because they're going to go into their system. They're going to do what's easy, what's quick, what's reliable, and they're going to use those numbers that are in the MLS. Realtor.com is fed by the MLS data. So if you're not a real estate broker, that's the closest data that you're going to see that the appraiser is going to see. So rely on that data. That's my advice. Now, later on, I'm going to talk about affecting, I'm going to get a little ahead of myself here, but I am going to talk about affecting that appraisal. When you do have something that didn't go through the MLS and it did sell for a high price, how are you going to present that to the appraiser? That'll be on one of my next slides. So we will get into that, but crime, comps. All right, so comps, how do you know, what about the area? How far away should you go? What should determine, I guess I should say this, what should determine the area you're looking for on comparable properties? What should determine it? All right, I don't like a distance. A quarter mile in Chicago could be double the prices. I had somebody, rookie investor I met at their property. They didn't know how they were going to get out of this flip. They thought the comp on that flip was going to be like 300,000 and it was going to be lucky to be 200,000. And they said, look, someone showed me this comp. It's only a quarter mile away. Well, you were comparing the Beverly neighborhood to like the Fernwood neighborhood, or it wasn't Fernwood, but it was another neighborhood just on the other side of the expressway. It was less than a quarter of a mile away. And it was like apples to oranges. And they lost a lot of money based on bad comp. So here's what I would say. You want to be restricted to the neighborhood as much as possible. And we can define neighborhoods. One of the boundaries, you don't want to cross any busy street. So even if it's neighborhood, give you an example, in Beverly, which I do a lot, in Beverly, there's 95th. Then there's kind of North Beverly, there's kind of South Beverly, right? Well, 95th cuts right in front of, right beyond that. Even though they're pretty comparable, I try to do my comps on one that's north of 95th. I try to keep all those comps north of 95th. South of 95th, I try to do the same thing. So I'll even subdivide a neighborhood if I can. You don't want to cross a railroad tracks if possible. You know, the old expression, they grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. There's a lot of truth to that. Neighborhoods can change because a railroad track only allows certain areas to pass through. Not every street maybe goes through. And that sets up a barrier, a natural barrier, where sometimes one of the sides might have their own, development and their own kind of, maybe education system, their own parks that they go to. The care of their homes may be different, right? So you got to be careful of that. Same thing with like a river. The other thing is that most people don't think about that you may want to look into is park district. Sometimes you'll have a suburb and maybe one will be one park district and one might be another. We say, how does that enter into the value of the house? Well, maybe one park district has the nicest facilities. They have, soccer teams for the boys and the girls. They have basketball teams and they have a swimming pool that's great. They have all of these great things within that park district. And you go across the street and you're no longer in district. Yeah. So you may have to pay extra to get those same features, or you might not be able to get them at all because you live out of the district. So think about district. And the other thing, of course, is school district, which is huge in the suburbs, especially, right? If you're going from one school district to the other, that could be night and day. Could be in the same town. Some towns have more than one school district in it. Here in the southern suburbs, there's a subdivision that in the middle of the subdivision, part of that subdivision goes to Homewood Flossmoor High School, and part of that subdivision goes to, and I may be wrong, I think it's Thornton is the name of that high school. It's like night and day how those are rated. It's in the same subdivision. So they, I just buy in this neighborhood, I just buy in this subdivision and I'm fine. Well, there's an example of in the same subdivision, the value of the homes will change within a block, okay? So knowing all those things, and not only the value of how fast, also how fast it's going to sell, which would be holding costs, also translates into profit. Okay. All right. Enough of that on comps. You got to get things that are comparable. You try to stay within about 10% of the square footage. All right. Well, what does that mean? Well, if your subject property is 200 or 2,000 square feet, you want to stay within 10% higher would be 2,200 square feet. 10% lower would be 1,800 square feet. So between 18 and 2,200 square feet is where you really want to try to stay in for the comps. You can adjust a comp based on the square footage being higher or lower, and I do that all the time, but it'll give you a much more accurate picture if you can stay within 10 square feet, or 10% of the square footage to begin with. As a general rule, what is more costly per square foot, a larger house or a smaller house? What would you expect to find? So let's say we're comparing, and they're like houses, they're very comparable. Would you expect, let's say two houses are right next to each other. One of them's 1,800 square foot and the other's 2,000 square feet, just to use that example. Now let's go to 2,200 square feet. What do you think costs more per square foot? What's got the greater value per square foot? What would be your guess? The 1,800 one or the 2,200 one? You think if you put out the price of that house, what it sold for, let's say per square foot, what's probably the higher per square foot house? The most expensive things in a house really are mechanicals. What I mean by mechanicals is HVAC, the electrical system, the plumbing system, even the roof. Let's throw that into there. So both houses probably have one with the sizes that I gave you, probably have one furnace, right? On the small house, they need a furnace. The same probably furnace as the bigger house. Now the bigger house might need a little bit, maybe a couple $100 more, bigger size furnace, but basically it's a furnace. It needs the duct work. It needs the electrical work. It needs the plumbing work. It needs all the same thing, but in a smaller house, you still have to have those mechanicals. So in general, if you look at what a house sells for, usually the smaller houses sell for a greater price per square foot. And the reason I bring that up is when you're doing your ARVs, so I just gave you an example of, okay, well, look, and I've seen people make this mistake. They'll run a comp, and let's say the comp was 1,800 square feet. And they say, look, this sold for $150 per square foot. My house is going to be 2,200 square feet. That's going to sell now when I do the math, 2,200 square feet times 150 per square foot. Look how much this should sell for. It doesn't work out that way. Those two houses side by side, you know, depending on the neighborhood, of course. I mean, they may sell for $50,000 different, maybe not even that, $20,000 difference, $30,000 difference. But if you looked at the price per square foot and you calculate it that way, you're gonna be mistaken, and you're gonna be misinformed, and you're gonna make your decision based on an incorrect ARV. It's your price per square foot. If there's same amount of house, same square footage, you're probably pretty good in that. But if it varies at all, it's just in general, the smaller house is going to have a higher per square footage. Okay. All right. Enough on that. I'm going to go through rehab budget and ROI on a separate sheet. So making offers. So once you evaluate it, I'm going to talk through the evaluation process again in detail. But once you get your evaluation and you know what you can pay for the house, and you make an offer on the house. So, and I've been on both sides of offers, believe me. When I sell properties, I'm on the receiving side. I'm getting these offers. When I'm buying the properties, I'm making these offers. So a strong offer. What makes a strong offer? If I said, man, I got a strong offer, what would you say? What makes a strong offer? Okay. Cash offer would be stronger than financing, right? What about a financing offer? What's stronger? What generally would be, at least in my mind, would be construed as a stronger offer? A conventional financing or FHA financing? Yeah, most people, if they're pre-approved, they would say that it would be a conventional. And here's why. Because the conventional, you don't need to have another appraisal done or another inspection done, because your FHA appraiser is also going to do an inspection of the property too. So that could cause issues that have to be either done or you're not willing to do. And the other thing is, normally, not always, but normally the FHA buyer is not as strong a buyer in terms of their income and the amount they have down. They're going FHA because they can't put 20% down. They're going FHA because they might not have a high enough credit to get approved. So it's not a blanket statement, but most investors, most sellers, most brokers would agree that, hey, if they're conventional, they're probably a pretty strong buyer. Because if that fell apart for any reason at all, they could go FHA. If the FHA deal falls apart because of their financial situation, they don't have a plan B. That is the plan B, right? So FHA, if it is, obviously cash is king. Cash would be first. Financing would be an FHA buyer. I'm sorry, would be a conventional buyer, conventional loan, then an FHA and VA loan. I kind of would lump those two together. It's kind of the same process going through there. What else? That would make it strong. What else? Earnest money. You look at earnest money, you consider that in terms of the strength of the offer. But remember that as a buyer and a seller. So if I'm going to make an offer on a property, and making a strong offer has certain elements to it versus making a weak offer. And one of those elements is earnest money, right? So I know a lot of investors, oh, I'll get it under contract and I'll, my earnest money will be $100. Yeah, they might accept the offer, but if there's any offers even close, even if there's offers that are lower than yours and they're going to put $5,000 earnest money, they're probably going to reject your offer and go with the lower offer because your is a weak offer in the area of earnest money. Some of them have a 2-tier earnest money. So you might say some offers is, okay, I'm just writing this contract up right now. I'm only putting in $200 earnest money, but after my inspection period, if I'm going to move forward, I'm going to now put in $5,000 earnest money. So some people do it in 2 tiers like that. So you'd have, obviously, if it was up front would be the best, but even that second tier, take that in consideration. All right. So that's earnest money. What about what I have on there, weasel clauses? And the reason they call it weasel clause is you're trying to weasel your way out of the contract. So, you know, investors will get it under contract. They're either maybe going to try to wholesale it, or they're going to get it under contract. Then they're going to try to get their financing together or whatever. They're going to try to get a partner brought into the deal. So they'll get it under contract, but they'll have these weasel clauses like, and I'm not saying financing is a weasel clause, but it's a contingency that it doesn't make it as strong as if there's no mortgage contingency. It could be a mortgage contingency, attorney review period, my partner review period, my inspection review period, my, you know, it's a cloudy day review period. I can only evaluate this on a cloudy day. You know, whatever they put in there, they'll put in all these different, what they call weasel clauses, and a seller will look at those as to the strength of the offer. So I usually have, I usually don't take out inspection contingencies in there, but I have. I've gotten deals for 10 to 15, 10 to, let's say, probably 10 to 15,000 less than other bids because I made cash offers with no contingencies. So I bought one of the houses I'm working on right now in Beverly, in the Beverly neighborhood. We got the house for, I think it was 192. And I think the broker, well, probably wasn't supposed to tell us this, but at one time, I think confided in us that they had offers well over 200,000. They had an offer, I think, at 210, and they rejected that offer and they took ours. You say, like, why? What in the world? It's because the other offer had a bunch of weasel clauses in it. They weren't a cash offer. And this seller, who was a private, it was actually a hard money lender. They foreclosed on another investor. They had it under contract. We didn't get the deal right away. They accepted another contract. About 2 months later, it comes back on the market. We put in the same, basically the same offer again, and we get it this time. And even though they had higher offers, the reason they went with us is there's like, we're not going through this again. We just spent 2 months holding up that property and in getting all these, adding up all these holding costs for 2 more months, tying the property up, and the deal didn't go through because their funding didn't go through. When we made a cash offer and I could show them a picture of the bank statement, the checking account that had $200,000 in it from one of our LLCs, we say, we can close. The other thing on closing, you know, if they're looking at the financing, they're like, oh, you know, we need 30 days to close. I'm like, no, we can close tomorrow if you want to. You determine the closing date and we'll be there. We got cash in the bank right now. We need to get this thing closed. We got the, you know, we leveraged that. We leveraged our cash. We leveraged the fact that I could go in there and kind of do an inspection myself, get my contractors in there, that I didn't need the inspection period to get a good deal. So just think about that. I'm not saying you not put contingencies, but just understand the pros and the cons. The more contingencies you put in, the weaker the offer, the less likely it is that you're going to get it for a good price.